And that's where I met my wife, Kelly. She was also in med school down there. And we met over a cadaver.
How romantic.
Right? I mean, best first date ever. Right?
Oh, man.
Paging Dr. Cook. Paging Dr. Cook. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR.
Welcome to the Prescription for Success podcast with your host, Dr. Randy Cook.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Prescription for Success. I'm Dr. Randy Cook, your host for the podcast, which is a production of MD Coaches, providing leadership and executive coaching for physicians by physicians to overcome burnout, transition your career, develop as a leader, or whatever your goal might be. Visit MD Coaches on the web at mymdcoaches.com because you're not in this alone. And don't forget that CME credit is available when you listen with us. Just look for CMFI in the show notes to learn how. My guest today is a board-certified radiologist who likes to spend his spare time with a completely different kind of imaging. In his case, it's much more artistic than diagnostic. So let's hear Dr. Maz Ghani tell his story. I'm really looking forward to my conversation today with Dr. Maz Ghani, who is speaking to us from out on the West Coast, Arroyo Grande, California. Maz, thanks so much for being with us today. I'm looking forward to the conversation for a lot of reasons, but thanks for being here.
And thank you very much, Randy, for having me on today for this hopefully delightful conversation. And I'm looking forward to sharing my story.
Well, I am looking forward to hearing it and maybe delving into your hobbies a little bit as well. But as we always do, I'd like to talk about your early life, which is particularly interesting. I think I've spoken to a number of guests who were not born in the United States, and the story of how they got here is always fascinating. And I bet the same is going to be true for you. You were actually born in Syria, as I recall.
That's correct. Yes, I was born in Damascus, Syria, oldest city in the world, and back in '69, and have extended family over there, and ended up moving, of course.
Yeah. About how old were you when you moved?
Well, my parents left me to move to Sydney, Australia when I was 2. Left me with my extended family for about 3 years. Mm-hmm. And then when I turned 5, about 1975, my family put me on a Qantas 747 jumbo jet from Damascus to Manila, Philippines to Sydney, Australia.
When you were 5?
5 years old, accompanied by my own stewardess. Wow. And I still remember that flight. It was very memorable.
Did you find it frightening at all?
It was frightening. I was sad. I was happy, excited. Scared. I mean, there's a multitude of feelings and emotions that come across a 5-year-old's, mind at that point in time. Leaving your extended family, cousins and aunts and uncles and grandparents, of course. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I was going on a trip. And I vividly remember in Manila, Philippines, we went out to the airport. It was very humid, hot, and we landed in Sydney. And there was 2 people waiting for me. I didn't know who they were. Back then, we didn't really have iPhones and photos and whatnot, that were readily available, of course. And that was tough, letting go of the stewardess who took care of me for about 24 hours. And now I'm with 2 strangers. Yeah. And it was not a pretty sight.
So you had not had any significant contact with your parents during that 5 years?
Correct. Well, I didn't see them. I don't recall if I spoke to them through the phone. That's, again, something that wasn't readily available in the Middle East.
Of course.
And if it was very expensive. And, between ages of 2 and 5, you're engulfed in family and fun and food and being,
of course,
spoiled and taken care of because your parents aren't taking care of you. So you really get whatever you want. And, and now, you go somewhere far and you're missing that family unit where now you are being, taken care of by two individuals who don't recognize your parents and are being forced to do things that you don't want to do, or you're not allowed to do certain things. And it was tough.
I bet it was.
So I didn't eat. I didn't want to eat. They took me to doctors, to psychiatrists, to a number of specialists to figure out why, I wasn't eating.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there's, a whole psychosocial issue with, a 5-year-old going to a new country to be with two new people. So it was very difficult for me.
So tell me about the language transition at that point. I assume that you were speaking, that the Arabic was your native language. Correct.
Arabic is my mother tongue. I did not know any English at the age of 5. So arriving in Sydney, they enrolled me in a local kindergarten, and I picked up on English very fast.
Yeah,
of course. And it was a challenge because my father worked at EMI Records, HMV, his Master's Voice Records.
Yeah.
12-hour shift. My mother worked at a canning factory, 12-hour shift, and they overlapped. And I was kind of on my own between them, between school and having a parent or not having a parent. They left me alone sometimes. This is 1975, right? So It wasn't a big deal. Kind of maybe have a friend come over to watch you. And, my father ended up getting me Lego sets, and I fell in love with the whole Lego system and building and creating and designing and whatnot. And that kept me busy throughout the years that I was there, the 5 years I lived in Sydney.
Yeah.
And I loved Sydney. I loved the city and the friends and whatnot. Of course, you end up forgetting about your life in Syria. And,
And I was just going to ask you about how long, if you have any conception of it now, about how long did it take before that began to feel normal?
Well, based on conversations with my parents, who are both now deceased, it took about 6 months for me to really come to being a quote, normal 5-year-old kid, who would just watch cartoons and play outside and eat on a regular basis. Yeah, about 6 months. And I ended up going back to Syria with my mother back when I was 7 to kind of reunite with some family. Mm-hmm. They wanted me to stay in touch with my culture, with my heritage and whatnot. It was very important. And at home, we only spoke Arabic. There was no English at home. That was forbidden because they wanted to make sure that I spoke Arabic for life, which I do. And I'm very grateful for that.
I think that's wonderful. And I bet it really does mean a lot to you.
It really does, yeah.
But then there came a decision to move to Canada. What was that all about?
So my mother had asthma, and the weather in Sydney was not very ideal for her. It was very humid. The summers were just hot. Her asthma was getting worse. So they decided to move to a cooler, drier climate. And they applied to visas in the U.S. and Canada. The U.S. denied them the visa. Canada accepted, and they ended up taking it.
Well, they certainly found a cooler place.
They did, absolutely. So June 14th, 1980, we packed up our goods, 12 old suitcases without wheels. And I remember those. And my mom, dad, and myself got on a plane and flew to Vancouver. And that was an experience. And we stayed there for about a week just to kind of, do a little tourist activities and look around and whatnot. And then we boarded a train from Vancouver to Toronto. CN Rail went through the Rockies and the prairies. Really pretty, just gorgeous, gorgeous. I'd love to do that again sometime. And that was a 5-day adventure across Canada and ended up in Toronto. Didn't know anyone and took a cab, went to a hotel, and my father started looking for an apartment, which we found almost within a day or two. Mm-hmm. Moved in, they enrolled me in school. It was now late June. Next thing I remember, it's snowing in September. I'm like, what is this white stuff that's coming down?
Yeah. And again, you were about, what age were you at that point?
I was 10, and I just spent, 5 years in Sydney where it's hot. You spend Christmas on the beach, right? Because it's summertime. And that was a big shock. It was cold and, new school, and it was another challenge, right? I mean,
sure.
Acclimating to a new country, new life. Of course, I was bullied because I had an accent.
You're different. Yeah.
I'm different. Not only am I Middle Eastern, my name's different, but I also have an Aussie accent too.
Yeah.
So, just layer upon layer of issues, that it was part of the adventure, I guess. When you look back at your life, whether it's good or bad, it's still part of the adventure and part of our journey.
And it sounds like there were not really any medical types in your family, so I'm wondering where the interest in medical school came from.
Well, actually, my mother's side, she has cousins in Cleveland at the Cleveland Clinic that are physicians, surgeons, ENT, dermatology, optho. So a number of physicians on my mother's side, no one on my father's side. And when my parents arrived in Toronto and we settled down there, my father took a job with Seiko watch companies. He was a shipper-receiver, and he had trained as an accountant. That was his college degree. And my mother's a college dropout. She went to college for a year and a half, and then she got married at 21. And then she worked at Burger King, right? Wow. So that's what they did. And we were struggling. And they really did not want me to struggle. They wanted me to have a better life. I think they groomed me, especially my mother groomed me to go into medicine. That was sort of a constant conversation. Not even law or engineering or any other profession, medicine, and specifically surgery. Not sure why, but she thought that surgeons were kings in her mind.
I wish that were true.
Right. And when it came down to it, when I did end up going, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here, going into radiology, she thought that was the worst decision I could ever make, being a radiologist. She said, all you're going to do, you have no respect. No one's going to respect you. You're just taking x-rays all day. I said, let me, kind of educate you.
And I can understand how a lot of people who don't have any direct experience with medical practice might think that.
Of course.
And I'm sure we're going to talk later about the details of your radiology career, but I sidetracked you just a moment.
Sorry, my
apologies. I want to get you back into how you actually got yourself into medical school.
Growing up in Toronto, we moved a couple of times, and I was bullied constantly because of my name, because of the fact I was Middle Eastern, and because of certain cultural differences. My parents were stricter in certain regards. No girlfriends, no partying, no drinking. And there was, of course, cultural pressures on my end where I rebelled, and I got kicked out of the house at 16 because I had a girlfriend.
Wow.
And literally kicked out for a week, went to my friend's house, and that was an experience. And but I wanted to fit into two communities, right? My parents' community and my friends' community, and it was a challenge culturally.
I bet it was. Lots of great literature has been published about exactly that subject, and I'm fascinated to hear you talk about it.
Yeah, but I hid my, things I did out of my house well. I did a lot of things that my parents don't know about. And because I was 16 and 17 and 15, and that's what you do at that age. You kind of,
let's face it, every teenager on the planet is doing exactly that.
Right.
It sounds like it was a little more challenging for you.
Right. I'm still here, right? Nothing happened to me.
Right.
I survived in that world, and that's okay.
Today's episode is brought to you by Doc to Doc Lending. Doc to Doc provides match day loans of up to $25,000 to fourth-year medical students and current residents. These loans are designed to help students cover personal expenses, such as moving costs, housing down payments, and living expenses before and during residency. With fixed interest rates, flexible repayment terms, and no prepayment penalties, Doc to Doc Match Day loans provide financial flexibility and allow students to focus on their exciting journey towards becoming a physician. Doc to Doc was founded for doctors by doctors. They understand the challenges and hard work involved in becoming a doctor, and they support doctors throughout their careers. Using their in-house lending platform, Doc to Doc considers the unique financial considerations of doctors that are not typically considered by traditional financial institutions. So don't let financial stress hold you back from achieving your goals. Doc to Doc Lending has you covered. Visit www.doctodoclending.com/MDcoaches to learn more.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Crow, founder and CEO for MD Coaches. Here on RX for Success, we interview a lot of great medical professionals on how they grew their careers, how they overcame challenges, and how they handle day-to-day work. I really hope you're getting a lot of great information. But if you're looking for an answer to a specific problem, management or administration challenge, or if you're feeling just a bit burnt out, like maybe you chose the wrong career, well, then there's a faster way to get the help you need. No, it's not counseling, it's coaching. RX for Success is produced by MD Coaches, a team of physicians who have been where you are. I know you're used to going it alone, but you don't have to. Get the support you need today. Visit us at mymdcoaches.com to schedule your complimentary consultation. Again, that's mymdcoaches.com, because you're not in this alone.
We'll get back to our interview in just a moment, but right now I want to tell you a little bit about Physician Outlook. If you haven't discovered this remarkable magazine, please do so very soon. It was created by physicians, for physicians, to showcase the intersection between clinical and non-clinical interests, whether it's writing, painting, cooking, politics, and dozens of other topics. Physician Outlook gives a physician perspective. It's available online and in print. It's really unique among physician lifestyle magazines. And like the Prescription for Success podcast, Physician Outlook amplifies the voice of any physician who has something to say. It also engages patients who still believe in physician-led, team-based care. And Prescription for Success listeners can get 3 months free when you enter our promo code RX for Success and select the monthly option at checkout. That's a really great deal on this stunning publication. And now let's get back to today's interview. Let me ask you, first of all, what was life like at the university level? Did it begin to smooth out a little bit in terms of the feeling of being the other, or was it just the same all the way through your education?
No, I think once I started university at 18, I think my life opened up to so many opportunities, socially, academically, professionally. That's when I first started volunteering at a local hospital in the emergency department to see if I enjoyed, the medical field as its most superficial, aspect.
That's pretty smart.
Volunteering at an ED, right?
Yeah.
You've got the pace, you've got the smells, the feel, the vibe, and is this something I really want to be in? And that was sort of the deal I made with my mother. Let's see if I like it or not first.
Yeah.
And I majored in biology with a minor in business. And I thought, that would provide me an opportunity to become a teacher or to go to grad school or to go into a number of other professions potentially. So I wanted to keep my doors open.
Well, that sounds like a pretty good plan.
Yeah. And I also wanted to make my parents happy, right? That was sort of, that's in me. I mean, I didn't want to disappoint them. So I wanted to kind of keep things open, even though I was a rebel at times. And I told her, I'd never want to go into medicine because you keep forcing me to go into medicine. I'm not going to do it. Yeah. I'm going to go do something else. And,
but you did.
Yeah, I did. And, academically in high school, it was awful the first 3 years. And in Ontario, we have grade 13, right? Not just grade 12. Yeah. So in Canada, you have college and university. Grade 12, you end up going to college, which is a 2 or 3 year program. Grade 13, you end up going to university, which is the 4-year program, standard 4-year program. And it wasn't until grade 12, grade 13 when I started excelling academically. But university was horrendous. It was awful. I really didn't enjoy my classes. I didn't like organic chemistry. And I graduated with, I think, a 2.4 or 2.5 GPA. which is
this
awful.
is interesting. Yeah.
It's awful. I mean,
Well, it's not awful,
go with that?
but it's hard to get into medical school with that. Let's face it.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And, I was just at a loss. What would I do with my life? I'm just a failure. That's what you think at the age of 22, 23.
Yep.
So I ended up applying to med school throughout the U.S., throughout Canada, rejections all the way around.
Yeah.
I was trying to look for other ways to get into medical field, healthcare-related field. I applied to dental school and School of Chiropractic. I did get accepted into Case Western Reserve University Dental School and Temple University. But ultimately, after a lot of soul searching, I really didn't want to be a dentist.
That is really fascinating.
It's just not what I want to do, right?
Yeah.
Unless I got into orthodontics, which was different. But that's another sort of challenge in and of itself. And chiropractic, I just didn't feel like it was, going to satisfy my mother's craving for me to be a physician because it wasn't a real doctor to her. So I had a friend who was a year ahead of me at the University of Toronto who was in the same boat pretty much, applied to med schools throughout the US and Canada, did not get in, ended up going to a Caribbean medical school, Ross University. Mm-hmm. And he came back home after his first semester and said, this is the real thing. I'm in med school now, and anatomy and biochemistry and whatnot. And I said, you're joking. This doesn't, it's funny because it's not a real school, is it? And he said, it actually is. And he said, why don't you apply? So I applied. I went to New York City because that was their headquarters back then in 1993, September. I interviewed. And a month later, I got the acceptance letter to go to Ross University School of Medicine with a 2.4, 2.5 GPA. I ended up graduating number 2 in my class.
I was just going to say that turned into a magna cum laude.
Exactly.
For you.
And because I loved it. I loved everything about it. The body, the human body. I loved the organization of systems. I loved memorizing, thinking about disease processes. I mean, everything you can think about in medicine was fascinating to me. And it had never been presented to me in that way, right?
Sure.
I spent the first 2 years down there in basic sciences. And that's where I met my wife, Kelly. She was also in med school down there. And we met over a cadaver.
How romantic.
Right? I mean, best first date ever. Right?
Man.
And a mutual friend actually introduced us. And my wife, and I hit it off and ended up coming back to the U.S. to do our clinicals. We took our step 1. I got, a great score. So I got the hospitals of my choice for Ross University. I ended up in the Hopkins system for most of my core rotations through the 3rd year.
Pretty good place to be.
Yeah. And it was 6 of us from Ross and 6 Hopkins students rotating at the same time. And we worked our butts off because we knew we had to really show them that we knew our stuff. And the attendings really couldn't tell the difference between our students and the Hopkins students.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at that. I mean, my observation has been that people who really excel, regardless of where they happen to be training, are just always top-notch people. And it sounds like you were in that crowd. But in any case, tell us more. I want to know how this finally evolved into this dreadful possibility of radiology that is such an awful thought for your mom.
It really is. It really is. So, we finished 4 years of med school, graduated, and applied to a 3-year internal medicine residency because that was sort of basic, well-rounded residency. I can kind of move on to subspecialty if I wanted to. But I really enjoyed my radiology rotation in med school and nuclear medicine rotation. And I ended up also applying to radiology as well, just in case, I got in. That would be great.
Yeah.
So I applied and I got into my first choice radiology residency, which was at Tufts Hospital in Springfield, Massachusetts, Bay State Medical Center. And I wanted something that wasn't too academic or too small. I wanted something that was clinically oriented but had an academic affiliation. I ended up doing my internal medicine internship at the same hospital I did my core rotations because I enjoyed it there. I knew the attendings. It just made sense. Mm-hmm. And I kind of, it was a good year, but I didn't enjoy it. Right. I didn't enjoy ICU. I really didn't enjoy clinic. It was just, I just wanted to get through the year, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, my wife was applying to pathology, and she applied to Bay State and got her first choice as well. So we ended up being at Bay State Medical Center together for our residencies, which was ideal. And we had a 2-year-old son at that time. So it was certainly a challenge to do 2 residencies and have
I bet it was.
a toddler. And we moved to Springfield, Massachusetts, and the 4-year residency was outstanding all the way around, academically, clinically, teaching, and ended up being a chief resident, and that was a wonderful experience as well. Did a couple of nationwide presentations at the major society meetings, won a Rank and Ray Fellow Award, Residence Fellow Award as well. So a few accomplishments along the way. But the bottom line is, I think I enjoyed what I was doing, right?
Sounds like.
I think that's the key, because, you can do a residency and kind of say, well, yeah, it's great money, but I don't really enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was really about learning disease processes and doing some procedures and not being focused on one body system or body part, right? Radiology afforded you the opportunity to focus on everything.
You bet. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. This idea of specializing in one single body system was something that I just never could wrap my head around, because it just it seems confining to me, and it sounds like you were having some of the same issues.
Absolutely, and so I ended up applying to fellowship during that time, and I wanted to do a body imaging fellowship. That was my goal, because I wanted to stay broad, but have additional training in CT, MR, ultrasound. I ended up choosing Boston Medical Center, Boston University. I enjoyed my interview. The department was well run. It wasn't too academic, but it was, academic enough with a good dose of clinical work. As opposed to Yale, which was a little bit more academic, Mass General, a little bit more academic.
Yeah.
Not something I wanted to really pursue. So that was a wonderful year as well. Had some great fellows and great residents, and it was time to look for a job.
And it appears to me that you looked in exactly the right place. Pretty sure the Berkshire area of Western Massachusetts is exactly where God lives, and that's where you went to practice, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And so I reached out to my previous chairman and program director at Bay State to see if there was any job openings in the area, and they offered me a job there at Bay State. Which I was very grateful for, of course. But I said, honestly, I made a pact myself that I'm not going to practice where I trained. Just for me, I just didn't want to do that because I was a resident there. I wanted something different. I wanted something where I wasn't known. At that time, the group in the Berkshires at Berkshire Medical Center had dissolved for a number of reasons. And a new group had come in from Michigan to take over, and they were looking for radiologists. And I was applying in November, ended up interviewing about January, went out to Berkshire Medical Center, interviewed with the group, and they were not established yet because they had just come in. So they were trying to figure out department and systems and whatnot. And they hired me on the spot, straight out. I would start July 1st.
How'd you feel about that? Was it kind of exciting knowing that you might get to be in on the architectural construction of this practice, or were you worried that, will they survive or will they not? What was in your mind at that point?
No, I was very excited. I was ambitious, especially after meeting with the 3 directors there. They were gung-ho about getting this practice off the ground and building an amazing group. And in retrospect, I'm glad I was there, because we built an incredible group and had really minimal issues. We grew from 5 to 10 radiologists over time, and had minimal issues over the years that we spent together, 18 years.
Do you know how practically unheard of that is?
Oh, I know. I absolutely know that, especially after speaking with colleagues and friends across the country, not just radiology, but other practices, anesthesiology and whatnot, that have issues upon issues and lack of stability. Mm-hmm. And we were a family. If you think about family structure, family dynamic, we were co-owners of this family. And even the spouses were cohesive, mm-hmm. and the kids. And it was just a really ideal situation to be in. And I knew it was a great group because when I asked or requested I work part-time my second year, they said, of course, that's not a problem.
That's a great setup.
I worked 10 days on, 18 days off for the year, and they were very accommodating. I mean, that's unheard of, right?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't think I've ever heard of a story like that. That's just absolutely amazing.
It is amazing. And the only caveat is it would push back my partnership by 6 months, which is fine.
Not bad. It's a great story, which I really appreciate you sharing with us. In spite of the little Shangri-La that you built for yourself in the Berkshires, now you decided to go to the other coast. What was that all about?
Well, after working for 18 years, I still loved my job. I love my job now, but our son moved out when he was 18. He moved to LA, and it was very difficult for my wife and I to be on the East Coast while he was on the West Coast. We were seeing him once or twice a year, and family is key for me. Family and health, very important. And so we had started looking, as soon as he left us, we started researching, where would you want to move to, retire, live? I started researching every single country in the world pretty much, and region and whatnot. And we came down to 3 areas that we would like to potentially live in. And one was New Zealand. I have an Australian passport, citizenship, so that would be easy for me to move there.
Mm-hmm.
The other place was Victoria, British Columbia, because of its microclimate. As my wife is a gardener, it would be ideal for her to garden there most of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be easy for me to move there because of my Canadian citizenship. And the third area was actually where we are right now, because we had visited here when my son moved to college. We came out here and spent about a week up here in the community, and we loved it. The proximity to the ocean, proximity to the mountains, size, amenities, proximity to our son. So we decided to revisit Arroyo Grande and ended up, getting a realtor and finding a house.
Yeah, sounds like you landed in exactly the right spot. And is your radiology practice entirely telemedicine related, or do you tell me how that's working?
Yeah, so I work for a teleradiology company, Virtual Radiology, based in Minnesota, and it is entirely teleradiology. I no longer wanted a hospital-based practice. I had done all the procedures I really wanted to do.
Yeah.
Politics, drama that were coming along with a hospital-based scenario, I didn't want anymore, even though my group was fine, but there's always other things with administration and whatnot that go along with it.
Yeah.
So when I really wanted to transition into kind of a semi-retirement phase, really travel a little bit more, get into the photography, the art process a little bit more. And so I thought that was a natural transition. And also my group was undergoing some changes that were not some new people coming on board, that younger generation that just didn't fit the vibe of the group.
Sure.
So I felt like it was a good time to make a plan to move on.
Well, Maz, I've really enjoyed hearing about your clinical endeavors, but I'm quite interested in your avocational interest, being an avid photographer myself. I want to know everything there is to know about your photography hobby. So why don't we start by hearing how you got interested in being a photographer?
Absolutely. Growing up, my father was an avid photographer and was a traveler throughout Europe in his younger ages. And he would share his photos with us growing up. And it wasn't until I was in my late 40s when I started taking photos walking through my wife's vegetable flower garden. She's an avid gardener. And I was enamored by the variety of colors, shapes, textures in the garden. And just using my phone camera, I just started taking pictures. And slowly, after experimenting with time of day, experimenting with a variety of colors and techniques, I would post these online, and friends and family would comment asking about how I took these photos, are prints available for sale? And at that point in time, I thought to myself, maybe I do have something here with regards to photography, expanding my photography selections and techniques. And I started researching online, looking at what was out there with regards to equipment, and played around with primarily flowers. That was my interest. I ended up acquiring a couple of cameras and a light box and a high-resolution Epson scanner, which allowed me to produce a diverse array of portraits, floral portraits, botanical portraits, that I was able to share with others. That hobby has really become a good part of my life, and it's balancing out my clinical work. I mean, prior to 6 years ago, I didn't have this in my life, and really struggled to find a passion to counter my clinical work and stressors that come with it. And photography has been a wonderful addition to not just my hobby, but also to income, with regards to potential income, selling prints and selling a variety of items that people have requested with these photos.
I have a feeling that the potential income source came about largely because these images are really unique. And I don't know what you can tell us that I and other people who haven't used this kind of equipment, I don't know if we'll really understand the details, but I would really like to know if you think you can tell us how you arrived at this just incredible, this stunning quality of floral images that I've just never seen anywhere.
Well, if you look at the images with the black background, for example, most of those are obtained on the Epson scanner in a dark room. And the flowers are laid face down on the scanner. Of course, there's a number of barriers to obtaining this image. Number one being insects that crawl out of the flowers that I didn't even know were there, right? So I scan, I'm like, what is this thing that's moving around, right? And, bees and ants. And the other issue is pollen, right? Because pollen is almost invisible to the naked eye. But when you take a picture of pollen, it is fascinating. And initially, I was cleaning up the exposed scanner portion to get rid of the pollen. But then I found that pollen really added a component and a sense of reality to that floral images, to some of my compositions. So I decided to leave the pollen in because it was something special about it, because it made it real, right? You can take a picture of flowers, but to add pollen to it, it was incredible in my eye.
I think that's something that only a genuine, congenital, genetically programmed artist would think of. I mean, I think the average person would think, oh, I've made a mess, and try to go back and do it all over again. Did you have the feeling that you were doing something out of the ordinary when you made that decision?
I did. And, my father taught me to always ask, what if? What if you do this? What if I added this or took this out? So I started asking myself, what if I just kept it in? What would it look like? What if I added different flowers? I think initially there was a little bit of a shock and hesitation of using it, but that was a very transient moment in my mind, which led to the acceptance of pollen and other sort of natural debris process that was occurring with the flower. To keep that in there, because I think it added something that I hadn't seen before in floral photography or floral art And I wanted to create something whimsical, something unusual. You can scour the internet, Google flower photography, and you'll see flower photographs on and on. I mean,
yeah, and they all look pretty much the same.
I didn't want that.
Yeah.
I wanted something different. I wanted to stand out and create my own signature. And of course, I researched other floral photographers and their techniques and used that as inspiration to what I could do. But I didn't want to copy them. I wanted to emulate them and try to create my own process and style. And that was a challenge for me because unless you do it over and over again and do it many times, it's really hard to come down on a particular style. But also, I didn't want to get stuck in one particular style. I wanted to keep myself open, my techniques open, and to grow from there. So if you look at my early works and comparing it to now, I have a totally different style on my Instagram page that I've transformed into. I'm trying new techniques. I'm trying more close-up views, angled views of individual flowers, as opposed to a portrait of multiple flowers. And I also noticed that certain flowers don't work well with others. For example, sunflowers, it's very difficult to photograph them with other flowers. They do well on their own. So if you look at my sunflower photography, they're always on their own. And that's just the way it's been for me, as opposed to wildflowers or zinnias, the black background with the colorful zinnias on there. Because if you place one zinnia in the middle, it just doesn't do anything for me. It needed to have that variety of color and texture to really blossom, pun intended.
You said something that makes me wonder. You said words to the effect that you saw something that others might think is a mess, but you saw something else. To me, that says that the artist's eye is truly different from some others. But I'm wondering if you think, is it that ability of you to see things in a different way that made you a better radiologist?
I try to separate radiology and photography.
I bet
know
you
there's
do.
a lot of overlap if you think about the basics of techniques and the basics of image processing and image capture and whatnot. And but I really, in my mind, like to separate them because I just don't want that overlap in my mind, because although both bring me, I won't say joy. Radiology is, a job, but I enjoy it.
Yeah.
But photography is not a job, but it's a joy.
Well, that makes plenty of sense to me. But what I'm saying is that I can tell you that I would be a lousy radiologist. And I can't tell you how many times that I've looked at the same film that the guy right next to me was looking at, the radiologist was looking at, and he saw things that I couldn't see. So I'm wondering if you think that part of your appreciation of visual things, in addition to making you a good radiologist, also contributed to you being a good artist. Absolutely.
I think there is a commonality between my visual discrimination for a 3mm nodule in a lung field with the fact that there's this pollen that's scattered over an image. I think there is some similarity, commonality between those two topics or scenarios. And I think for me, it's very comfortable to work as a radiologist because it's my job. I enjoy it. But it's very comfortable for me to take a photograph, compose an arrangement, which can be very time consuming, by the way. These things can take about 4 to 5 hours to do a final composition, from the harvesting of the flower from the garden to the final processing of the image.
But clearly both of those disciplines give you a great deal of satisfaction, self-satisfaction, for totally different reasons, wouldn't you say?
That's correct. Absolutely. And the satisfaction I get from radiology is not just the enjoyment of reading a case, making a diagnosis, but also helping a patient, helping the clinician take care of that patient. And I feel like I am satisfied with regards to what I've done, right? I've accomplished something and I've helped someone. That's a goal for me. With photography, I think there is a degree of satisfaction where I feel good about what I've accomplished in the composition, but I also love sharing and discussing the art mutually. So if I'm discussing it with another artist, for example, I will ask plenty of questions about their techniques, whether it's painting, whether it's drawing, photography, and I will gather data information with regards to how they've done things and maybe incorporate that into my techniques. And I would hope that they would ask me questions. I'm not the type to hide things or be secretive. I love to share my techniques because I think we can all grow in the world of art and the world of medicine if we share things with each other.
That's fascinating, and the images really are stunning. And a little bit later on, I'm going to ask you to share with the audience where they can find your images. You got a great website for that purpose. But at this point, what I'd like to do, Maz, is simply get out of your way for a moment and do what we came here for. So, audience, I'm going to close my mic, and for just a few minutes, Dr. Maz Ghani is going to share his personal prescriptions for success.
So my personal prescription for success, a number of things come to mind with regards to advice and inspiration. Advice and inspiration are an ever-changing topic and will depend on a number of variables as we go through life. I divide it up into 3 segments. Growing up, my parents and close friends were my biggest advisors and source of inspiration. During medical training and practice, I sought advice from my colleagues and was inspired by others in medicine to provide the best possible care for my patients. And currently, my Act 3 of photography and art centers around inspiration from nature, my wife, my son, and the arts community. With regards to the best advice that I've received, really advice is ubiquitous. It really has to be filtered down because it's based on an individual's own life experience. And it boils down to my father's advice: do what you like, and if you don't like it, try something else. With regards to looking back at 10 years ago, what would I tell myself? 3 things I would tell myself. First, slow down a bit, take it all in, find your balance, and you'll be happier. Be mindful of how much time you're spending at work and the compounding stressors associated with it, and ensure that you're present for your family and health. These are the foundation of who we are and will ultimately be the stepping stones to what comes next as we cultivate new challenges. Step out of your comfort zone, which is medicine in my case, and try something new. You spend a good portion of your life in the microcosm of medicine, spending time with like-minded people, doing similar daily routines, and spinning on the same cogwheel. Yes, you may listen to music, but have you ever dreamt of creating music? You visited art galleries and museums. However, why haven't you taken an art class, ceramics, or photography class? You enjoy eating at nice restaurants. Take some gourmet cooking lessons. Write some poetry, even challenge yourself to write a novel. These extracurricular activities will likely improve your mood and reduce anxiety, potentially leading to more enjoyable work experience. We practice the art of medicine, but we don't enjoy art for art's sake. Be curious, ask questions. Each question will open up new possibilities and opportunities. And finally, a quote from William Osler: "While medicine is to be your vocation or calling, see to it that you also have an avocation, some intellectual pastime which may serve to keep you in touch with the world of art, of science, or of letters. Begin at once the cultivation of some interest other than the purely professional. The difficulty is in a selection, and the choice will be different according to your tastes and training. No matter what it is, but have an outside hobby." Thank you. And it's been a great honor getting to tell my story and answer such engaging questions. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Well, Maz, it has really been a pleasure hearing your story, and we're grateful that you were able to be here and share with us. I'm really impressed by your prescriptions. Go slow, be curious, and have an avocation. Well, there's a lot of wisdom there, and I appreciate you being here to share with us. I want to give you an opportunity to tell the audience where they can find you and where they can find your art.
Absolutely. Thank you, Randy. My website is Maz Ghani, Ghani.com. I'm also on social media at Maz_Ghani, Instagram, and Facebook, Maz Ghani Photography. And you can always reach out to me at hello@mazghani.com if you have any questions or want to discuss photography or medicine or life.
Well, Maz, this has really been a terrific conversation, which I have enjoyed immensely. And once more, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Randy, for the opportunity. I really enjoyed it myself.
Thank you so much for listening with us today. If you enjoyed the show, you can help us reach many more listeners by leaving a rating and a review, especially on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And if your app doesn't have that option, just leave us an email or a voicemail through SpeakPipe at www.rxforsuccesspodcast.com. You can also help by becoming a Patreon member. That link is in the show notes. And we hope you'll also follow our companion podcast, Life-Changing Moments with Dr. Dale Waxman. Special thanks to our producer, Craig Clausen, our promotions manager, Mariana Rodabaugh, and to Ryan Jones, who created and performs our theme music. And remember, be sure to fill your prescription for success with my next episode.